Kelly Dale with Off the Beaded Path. I have a studio location in Forest City, North Carolina, and I have a website called offthebeadedpathbeadstore.com. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you missed last week's video, I showed you how to make a beaded hat band that was very similar to a wrap bracelet, but we kind of learned how to take it and make it into a band that would go around our hat, just like this cheetah print one is here. So today I'm going to be showing you how to notch up that hat band a little bit, and we are going to be making a beaded hat band on a loom. So even if you're not a hat person like I am, this can make such a great gift for somebody on your gift list that is coming up for this holiday season. When I first got into making hat bands, this was one of the first hat bands that I made. I absolutely adored this hat and this hat band. I made this specifically because I was completely enamored with the new Sex and the City show. I think it's called And Just Like That. A girl had, beautiful lady on there, had a macrame version of this hat band. I said, oh my gosh, I'm going to make my own version. It's going to be beaded. So this is how this hat band was born. Boy, howdy, did I learn some stuff on this hat. So once I did this hat, I loved it so much that I made another hat band. This one has a beautiful argyle pattern. I actually made this to go on the hat, the gray hat that you guys seen last week. So this is the one there. I really, really like this one. And today, I'm so excited because you're going to learn how to make this one today. You guys, I love this hat band. This hat band is just, it calls out to me. I just love it. And I can't wait for you to see how to make this awesome hat band. All right, so let's talk about what we need. First, you need a hat, okay? I'm gonna link down below to my favorite place that I actually buy my hats from. But now, you don't have to go to that website to buy a hat. I mean, you can go to a thrift store, you can go to like a box store. Anybody, just about anywhere carries hats now. So get you a hat first of all. The second thing you're gonna need is 5 colors of a size 11 seed bead. I specifically made the pattern to be used with size 11 Miyuki seed beads or size 11 Toho seed beads. So what does this mean to you or for you? What this means is that if you make it with the Miyuki or the Toho brand beads, it's going to come out the exact same length that I have listed on the pattern itself, which is free for you at offthebeadedpathbeadstore.com. Okay, so you need to head on over to my website, again, offthebeadedpathbeadstore.com, and look under step-by-step tutorials. Once you hit that little section, you'll see a category for free, and it is right there under that free section. So when you see it, you will see the 5 colors listed that I used on this specific hat band. You can use whatever colors you want, and you can use whatever brand you want. But what this means for you is that when you are stitching it, if you use, say, a size 11 delicate bead, your pattern is going to come out a little bit narrower, if that's even a word, and it's going to come out a little bit shorter. So you're going to have to compensate for that length and add a couple of more rows. You can see here, I tried to finish it out very easy with just some vertical lines of color. So it'll be really easy for you to extend that pattern. You can also use size 8 seed beads. What's going to happen there? Your hat band is going to come out thicker in height and longer in width. So again, you're going to have to compensate for that and use less rows on each end. But that's something that I'm going to talk about a little bit later on. So any beads you want, okay? The other thing you want to do and try not to do is try not to mix your brands. I did today, and it was just because there was one bead that I did not have in the Toho brand, so I grabbed it in a Miyuki. And the only thing that happens with that is it can sometimes make your hat band come out a little wavy, and it's just because the size difference in those two beads. So just be aware of that. Try to use all the same brand, okay? Now, the next thing that you are going to need is some thread. You are going to need what's called a warp thread, which are going to be our long threads that we put on our loom. And then you're going to need weft thread. Weft thread is what we are going to be adding our beads with, up and down, up and down. So for my warp thread, my long threads that are going to stay in place the whole time, I'm going to be using a 0.006 in the Wildfire. You can use your Fireline, dragon thread, although I don't like to use the dragon thread for my warp threads, especially on the jewel loom, because I have seen some stretching of that thread. So I would definitely probably use my Fireline or my Wildfire for that. Now, your weft threads, our stitching threads, you can use whatever thread you want, whatever you're comfortable with, whatever you like, okay? Now, the star of the show for this piece is this baby right here, okay? She's my favorite loom. She's called the Wisdom Warrior. And my friend Juliana Avelar is the one who created this loom. Juliana is the inventor of the jewel loom at jewelloom.com. We're going to put a link to it below. Okay. You can get this loom. The awesome thing about this loom is that you can bead on both sides of it. So like you wanted to do a guitar strap, something like that. You've got this amazingly awesome loom that you can bead on each side. Another cool thing that Juliana does with the loom, besides me doing my hat bands, is she will loom this up and do several bracelets or a lot of rings on this thing, okay? So don't think it's just for hat bands, okay? It just works wonderfully for a hat band. Okay, so the great thing, and Juliana is such a blessing to our beading community because what she's done for you for a year, okay, through October of 2024, you can use the coupon code shown, hopefully it'll be right here, okay? Go to jewelloom.com. She is going to give you, with that discount code, coupon code, she is going to give you 20% off, not only on the Wisdom Warrior loom, but any loom that she has on her website, okay? So she is such a gift to our community. She's an amazing creator. So make sure if you want one of these bad boys, you get to jewelloom.com, use the coupon code, and grab you one of these looms. Now, here's what Kelly knows, okay? I realize that we are going into a holiday season. This loom is not a cheap loom, okay? I bought it because I love making hat bands and I make several of them. This loom is not in everyone's budget, and I understand that, okay? The great thing about making a hat band on a loom is that it can be done in square stitch as well. So if this is not something that's within your budget, I completely understand, and you can do it with square stitch. So what I'm going to be doing this week's video is going to focus on the hat band with the loom. Next week's video is going to focus on a bracelet that I took out from this hat band, okay? And I'm going to show you how to do it in square stitch, which is going to be this design right here, okay? I'm going to show you how to do it in square stitch. It's going to be the exact same width, so you know how to get it started, and you know how to do the whole hat band if you wanted to do it in square stitch, okay? The only difference is it's going to take a ton of thread to do your square stitch, okay? That's it. So let's go ahead, make sure you go over to offthebeadedpathbeadstore.com and grab that pattern, and let's get started. Okay, so the first thing we need to know is how many threads we need for our warp. And what's great about this is each of our little black lines represents a thread we need to add. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So I have an 11 bead band. So this means I need 12 of my warps because I need a warp before and after. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So again, if this confuses you about your beads and you're not sure how many warps, just count your black lines, and that will give you your exact warps that we're going to need for this specific pattern. Now that we know how many warps we're going to need for our loom, I know I'm going to get questions of, can I use a bead besides the size 11 seed bead? And yes, you can. The thing is to know if you can use a size 11 delicate. If you use a size 11 delicate, it is going to make your piece a little bit less in your diameter or your height, whatever you want to call it, and it's going to be shorter in your width. So you may have to add more delicates on the end of your piece to be able to lengthen out to what you need. You can use size 8 seed beads for your piece, but just know it is going to make it bigger and wider. So you can't really get by with, or you can get by with the height, but the width, you're going to have to keep kind of playing around with it to make sure that you have the right width, because we need about 22 inches of beadwork is what we are going to need for our piece. So yes, you can use different size beads and different types of beads, but just be careful about the width and the height of your piece, because if you start getting too high, you see a lip around the band. So just be careful about that height. So let's get started. So your Wisdom Warrior comes with some little knobs, wooden knobs or buttons here on the end of the loom themselves. And you'll see you have one on each end, just like you see here. Now you'll also notice, if I turn it this way, you'll notice that our loom has these little notches or teeth, just like the jewel loom does, which is fantastic because it holds your thread in place really, really nicely. Now, the only, I don't want to call it a downfall, the only difference, I should say, between this loom and our jewel loom is that there's no tension rod that we can take out like we would normally do on our blue jewel loom. So this one, you have to make sure that you get it really, really, really tight and tensioned as you work. All right? So, to get started, I'm just going to take my little clear piece off, and I'm going to start a little knot here. All right, now you can already tell from this side of my loom that I really enjoy starting on this end of my loom. So I'm just going to continue to do that, and what I'm doing is I'm putting it over the knob here, and I'm going to tie it around the knob. So I'm going to put a couple of knots on here just to make sure that it's nice and secure. And yes, I know I can cut this thread off, but I promise you, by the time you finish your hat band, you'll be sick of working with it, and you won't care if you got thread on there like I do. Okay, so I'm going to give this a really nice tug here, and it does. I've got a nice little tension, so I don't have to worry about that coming apart. Now, I did want to show you really quickly the great thing about this loom. Let me get my thing out here. So this loom, actual weaving room, is about 4 inches, okay? So if you're one of my centimeter fans, this is what you are in centimeters. So you could do something up to 4 inches long, or wide there, I should say. And then I could do beadwork about 25 inches on one side. Okay, so I could do that much on one side. Now, like I said, you can continue to wrap around and bead on the other side as well. But we are only going to utilize our one side today. And we are going to utilize this whole length. So I'm going to start, since I know I have to have 12 of my threads. I'm going to start, and I'm going to kind of flip this around here. To me, there's a lot of flipping on this to kind of get it started. But I'm going to make sure that my thread goes into one of my grooves here that I have. And when I lay this down, I'm going to pull it tight. And I'm just basically, on this first one, I'm going to eyeball it, okay? I'm going to look right down on it. And I'm just going to eyeball it to kind of see if I'm in the same spot. If you wanted to, you could count each one of these little notches, but who's got the time for that? So I'm just eyeballing it, and I want to pull it really tight. You hear that? That lets me know I have a really good tension. So what I'm going to do is on this end, I'm going to bring the thread under the little knob here. And holy moly, what have I done with my finger? Let me, hold on. Okay, whoo, it was caught around my ring. There we go. I'm going to bring it under the knob. And then I'm going to come around one more time. All right. This is going to help hold the tension of my piece. All right. And if I don't feel like it's tight enough, or if I've lost the tension, I can again come back, go around one complete time. Here we go. And then come back up. Now, the great thing on the loom is, since I'm using size 11 seed beads, I don't have to skip any of my little notches here on the loom. So I just come to the loom. I come to the next notch that I have there. Okay, just like that. And I go through that notch. Now, as you work, again, make sure that you're keeping it tight. Okay, honestly, to me, this is the hardest part. And I actually think I'm going to move this over. That's going to drive me bonkers. I'm going to put this more in the middle. So give me just a second here. Why make life harder on myself, right? Okay, now I'm coming under, and I'm going to go around one more time again so that I keep that nice tension. And then I'm going to come to the next little notch there, and I'm going to come all the way across. And again, I'm going into that next notch on the loom. Okay, and again, I'm going to come under the knob, and I'm going to wrap one more time around the knob so that it keeps everything tight as I work. Okay, and you can see I still have it here on the spool, and that's exactly what you want. Now, if this is the first time that you have used this little loom, you are probably going to have to re-loom this more than once, all right? Just so that you can get an idea here of your tension that you're going to need. And that's why that extra wrap is so important, because it helps to hold the tension of your piece as you work. So what I'm doing is I'm just continuing to work my loom. And each time I'm going into the next little notch here, and I'm coming to this end. I come around the knob, and I'm going to go around one more time. Yes, I know that it uses up more thread, but as Juliana says, this helps to keep your tension really, really well, and that's what we want. Without good tension, we're not going to have a good hat band, and it's going to be hard to, really hard to kind of work on our piece and keep everything. So you see there, I just kind of had to get down on it to see. So I'm going to continue until I have my 12 threads warping it just like this. So I now have my 12 threads here warped and ready to go, and I have ended on the same side that I started. So I've wrapped the end a couple of times, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim or cut this thread, and then I'm going to tie these two threads together. And I'm going to make sure that as I tie them, I get a really nice tightness. And, you know, I can wrap around again and tie whatever you want to do that you're most comfortable with, you can do. You just want to make sure that that gets tied really nicely so that you have a good tension here in your piece. Now, again, we are doing this much, much larger piece as we work. So in the middle, it is, you're going to have a little bit of some tension, here in the middle. Your tension's mainly going to be here on the ends. It's going to be a little bit looser here in the middle. And that's okay, just as long as it's not super loose where it's going to mess you up. But this is how we have it loomed. And now we are ready to start actually with our beadwork. Okay, so now that we have our loom worked and ready, now let's look at the pattern. So when you look at the pattern, of course, you have your bead legend, you have your A through E. So you can switch out your colors however you want them to be for your pattern, but you want to go ahead and have them laid out A, B, C, D, and E. So when you look on your pattern, you have your bead chart, which is a representation of what your beads look like actually loomed up. There are several pages of those. And then you have your actual word chart. So your word chart goes all the way from row 1 to row 259. Now, for me personally, when I start working on the loom, I don't like to start on one end and work my way to the other end when I'm making a hat band. Just in case you get to the point where you're using a different size bead or something like that, and it could actually change the width. So I like to start in the middle. So on this loom, our little wisdom warrior goddess here, her lips are about the center of the loom. So that's where I will actually start my beadwork. Now, the beadwork itself, you notice I told you a second ago that on the word chart itself, we have 259 rows. So if I'm going to start in the middle, I want to start around row 130 on my charts here, okay? Now, I will work one whole side and then come back and work the other side. So I would start at 130 and I would reverse down to number 1. Okay, and then once I finish that side, then I'll go to row 131 and I will finish it out to 259. Okay, but I'm the kind of person, I like to work, I like to look at what I'm doing as well. So on my hat band on page 5, I know that it has 5 diamonds here in the center. So if I start here, let me grab me a pencil or a pen. If I start here, this should be the center of my pattern because I know that these 5 smaller diamonds make up the center of the chart. So this being the center, I would start here and I would work up and then work this whole part and, work my way all the way back to row 1 here. Okay, so this is how I'm going to start in the center. It does not matter if you start coming down or you work going up. It does not matter. All right, so let me see if I can find this one really quick. I told you we'd start around 130, so let me see. AEDC, 3B, C, D, E. Yeah, that's exactly right. So row 130. So you can start with either your word chart or your bead chart. It does not matter. You do you and work whichever side works best for you. So I have my beads laid out. I've got my Bead Easy system here on a little mat, and I love it because my loom will just sit right over it and I don't have to worry about it. I've gone ahead and on 2 yards of thread on a new needle, I have my first row of beads here threaded on. Remember, I said her lips were about the center of our loom that we're using. So I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to come underneath the warp threads here. And I'm going to leave myself about 6 to 8 inches of thread. Now, I'm going to take and I'm going to get the first, 1 or 2 beads in place. Because like I said, this first one is the hardest because your threads are going to move around. until we get them kind of in place. So what I do is now coming above the beadwork or above my little warps here. It's hard because I'm not used to working like in this direction behind the camera like this on the loom. And sometimes you might just have to put one bead in there until you kind of start getting it going. But I like to get like 1 or 2 or even 3 little beads in place here. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see here. So you see I have 1 thread in between each of those. And then I'll go ahead and I'm going to pull this through. So that gets those in place. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and then I'll start the next beads in place. And again, this first row is the hardest. Once you get past this first row, it's not as bad, I promise. But my needle is coming above the threads through the beads. So you see that little piece of metal in there. That's my needle. That's what we want to see. Once this first row is in place, I promise you, you'll have a much easier time. Whoop, whoop, one just moved. Come on. Oh my goodness, did y'all just hear my stomach? That's so funny. Okay, so here again, I'm just going through 2. Be patient. Be patient with the beads and with yourself. Okay, so you look right there. Look, I completely missed getting through those beads right there. And how I know is because my thread's right here. And you see right there how it skipped that? So that's how I know. So I've got to, number 1, I'm going to realign this here in just 1 second. So give me just a minute. Let me get this. Because if I made it and I did a mistake, you guys could possibly do this too. So just want to make sure we're all know how to fix it. Okay. So let me get this next bead in place here. There we go. Okay. Oh, needle's still under that thread. Come out, come out. So I'm just having to get out from under some of those threads where I got it caught just a minute ago. Okay, so I got through 3 or 4 at that time, so that's really good. Okay, so it looks like I only have these last little few to get through here. Come on. There we go. Ha, there we go. All right, first row is in. That first row you kind of have to fight with to get it in place. But once you fight with it and you get it in place, then the rest of the rows are going to be easy because you've already got the threads separated here like you need them to be. And you can see there, I'm kind of right at her lips, which is the center of my piece where I need to be. So that was this row here. So now I'm going to go to the next row and I will thread these beads on. So I have my next row of beads threaded on, or row 129 if I'm going by the word chart. And again, I'm going underneath my warp threads here. I pop my beads up. I'm pushing them up so that when I put my needle through, my needle is going over these threads and through the beads. So what I want to see is just that little tiny metallic bit right in between each of the beads. That's how I know that I haven't skipped any of these little threads here and I've gone through or above the thread through the beads. So you can see how much quicker and easier that row was to get in because we had this first row in. So if you want to, if you have a paper copy, you can definitely mark off your rows like this, or if you're using the bead word chart, you can mark those off so that I know that I can just continue on with my beads. So let me thread on the next row and show you how that one's done. So my next row of beads is added here, and I'm gonna, again, we come underneath my warp threads here. Push your beads up. You'll almost, it's funny because when they get in there, you'll almost feel like a little click when they pop into place. And that's the best feeling, when you feel that popping into place. And so the great thing is, if you miss one of these, not coming over this as you're going through the beads, so the good thing is it's not going to fall out, okay? When you're actually wearing it, that bead is not going to fall out. But when you take it off of this warp, or you take it off of your loom, you will see it, because it will either pucker up or pucker downward. So that is the downfall of it. So I'm going to work a couple of more rows so you can start to see my pattern here. All right, so I am showing you this super up close because I want you to see something. I was just weaving away, wasn't paying attention, and I wove this last row in, and when I looked down, I was like, uh-oh, and I'm going to tilt it here to the side, and you can see, the thread here above my actual beads right here down near the end. So what that means is I didn't get these beads pushed up good with my needle going above that thread. That's why I can see those. So I need to actually go ahead and fix these 2 rows. So you are going to be tempted to try and take your needle back through those and fix it. Don't get into the temptation, okay? Take your needle off, come here to the end of your row, and use your needle to start picking that thread out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this thread completely out, and I'm going to take this row off. I'm just going to slide it off and set it to the side, because if I tilt it to the side, you can see there that I missed it on this row as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull those beads off. And then again, I'm going to come here to the end. I'm going to grab a hold, pull that thread, and now this time I'm not going to take the beads off. I'm going to leave them kind of pushed up where they're at, and I'll thread my needle back onto my piece. Get it done. And then this is where I will come through those beads again. And again, you want to see that silver in between them. So don't be like me and not pay attention, trying to weave it and get done. Okay, so I can see the silver there between each of those beads, so I know that I'm good to go. And so once I've got that fixed, now I can go through and start putting more beads on. So as you can see here, I have some more done on my hat band. And when you get this much done, if you do not like your colors, then you need to decide what changes you want to make, pull it out, and do some color change, because you don't want to get super invested into this piece before you decide, hey, I don't like those colors. All right. So at this point, you'll want to take a color check. The second thing that you need to know is I started out with 2 yards of thread here. 2 yards of thread did about 3 inches of my beadwork. So this is going to be a thread piece that you're going to use a whole lot of. So when you finish off, or you get to one end here and you see that I only have about 4 inches of thread left, then what I'm going to do is, for now, I'm just going to leave this thread here. I'm not going to do anything. You see I have my start thread here. I'm just going to leave these threads, and I'm going to start a new thread just like I did down here and continue on with my beadwork. I'm not going to worry about getting rid of these threads until I have this whole half side of the beadwork complete. So once you have the first half of your piece done, Then you're left on the end with some thread. Now you do not want to cut this thread off or get rid of this thread yet. You can see I've got rid of all of my other threads, and I had to start a new thread just about 5 rows back. So what we want to do, we are going to weave in and out of our work threads here to give us just a little bit of thread in between our warps. So I'm going to zoom in here just for a minute so you can see how we're going to do this. But what we're going to do is we are going to treat our work threads like a weave almost. All right, so what this means is I've got my needle and I'm going to go under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, and over. So right now I have threads on the top of my needle and threads below my needle. And I'm going to pull them just like that. And I'm going to kind of take my thumb and push those threads up against the beadwork itself. So right now my thread is coming on top of this end right here. So now I'm going to come under, over, under, over. And I'm just going to start working this under, over as I work along my piece. To me, this is the hardest part because, you know, you have to almost be ambidextrous here to do this, or you're going to be moving the thing around a lot. So once I get all the way through, I pull it, and again, I'm going to push this up against the piece. So what we're doing is we're just weaving away. So now my thread is coming out under this last one. So this is over, under. Wherever you're ending, you're just going to do the opposite of that on the other end. Now, if you skip one of these threads here in the middle, it's completely okay. No worries. Our main objective is we just want to get this woven in really good so that we have a little bit of grip here for when we finish, for our piece to kind of grip onto without having to go onto our beads so much. So I'm going to continue weaving this for just a minute, and then I'll be back to show you what it's going to look like as you get more done. So after you've woven in a good bit of your thread, you'll see here how much of the black that is there. That is all my thread. So if I pop it out, this is what you got in centimeters, and this is what it's about 1/4 of an inch in inches. Okay, so I've used up a pretty good amount of my thread. So what I need to do now is get rid of this thread. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come around and I'm going to do myself a little half hitch knot here around this last work thread. And then I'm going to weave to the other side. Just doing that up and down motion to get there. And then I'm going to press my little weaves up just like normal. And now this time, again, I'm going to do myself a little half hitch knot here. Don't think I did a half hitch knot there. There we go. And then again, I'm going to weave through. And then once I get to the other side, I'm going to trim my thread. But before I trim it, I'll show you what I'm going to do. So I'm going to get here to the other side, push this thread in against all the others, and then I'm just going to kind of bring it through a few of my warps here before I cut this thread. So now I can push all this up, and I'll be ready to cut this thread. Now, the great thing about when you're getting rid of all these little extra threads here when you finish, I don't worry about tying these too much, just because of the fact that this is going to be on a hat band and it's not something that I'm going to wear every day. So if you wanted to, you could definitely throw some knots in there, and I'll link to some other videos that I've done on the loom so that you can kind of see how that's done. But all I'm going to do is I'm just going to weave this thread in and out of a few of my rows. Ooh, got me there. And then once I do that, then I can go ahead and trim this little tail thread so that then I will be able to start back here in the middle of my piece and continue on with my length. After multiple hours, you will then have your piece complete. It took me, I tested it, this whole thing took me about 12 to 13 yards of thread. And I love how the pattern turned out. So once I've got all of the threads stitched in, I have the ends woven, then I can use either my E6000 glue, you could use the Loctite gel glue. I prefer the E6000, but it's up to you. And what you want to do is put a thin line of glue here right at the end of your little weaves of thread, okay? Then we're ready to cut it off the loom. Don't be scared of this. I promise you it's not going to fall apart when we cut it off, all right? So let me get my scissors and we will cut this off. So once I've got this glued and it's dry, I'm ready to use a really nice sharp pair of scissors. And I want to get down here close to the base of my little button that I have here. And I'm going to hold this when I cut so that it doesn't bounce up. But I'm going to hold it. And you can see there that those cut straight through. Now let me flip this little guy around here. And we can't really cut it, we can't really just undo it because it's got all of this thread here. So all you want to do again is just cut that. And then these little threads here will just pull right off and you can get rid of those little threads so that you are now left with your hat band off the loom, and you are going to be so happy with how it feels, how it looks. So now let's go over what to do with the ends and how to finish it out. So just like on a loom bracelet, we are left with all of these little ends here. So we're going to do this just like we would on a bracelet off of our loom. I'm going to start here on the very end with 2 threads, and I'm going to tie those 2 threads together. Now, I would probably do these in like double knots or something like that if I was making a bracelet, but since I'm not, and this is just going to be a hat band, all I'm going to do then is just do a little single knot. So I take one piece from my first knot and I take the next cord and I tie those. And all I'm just going to work straight across, just taking each thread, taking a thread from my last little knot and my next thread in line, and just tying these threads. Okay. And just pull them down just like that. So you're going to work just tying these threads together all the way across, and you're going to do the same thing on the other side as well. So once you have these all tied, you're going to go ahead then and cut these threads. Now I actually leave just a little bit there on the ends because I mean it's going to be covered up, why not? So again, I'm going to come through, I'm going to grab a hold, and I'm just going to cut these edges just like that. Now I'm going to use an index card, and I'm going to lay my beadwork down here on the index card, just like this. So if I put it here, it's basically going to be in between 1, 2, 3 lines here, or I can just bring it down here to the very bottom, and 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to cut here on this 1, 2, third line right here. So let me grab not a good pair of scissors. So this is going to become my guide on how wide I need to cut whatever it is I'm going to use for the ends. Now, I know that there are people who are super picky about what they use on the ends. I like to use what I have. So this is just a piece of ultra suede that I have. This is what I use to back bead embroidery, and I did this on another hat band and it worked out great. I had no issues using this and it holds up well. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use that one on this as well. So I'm going to use this as my guide to cut my ultra suede. And this is where you kind of have to decide what you're going to do with it. Meaning, do you want to do it like this, where I used and kind of did a double bow? Or would you rather run, and maybe this is to me is great for women. For the men in your life, if you make one of these, you may actually want to just run your cording one piece down through here and one piece through here. And that way you can either tie it here or put a bead on the ends to bring it up and tighten it up a little bit. So I'll show you both ways. It's completely up to you and kind of how you want to do it. But if you want to do it the way that I just showed you, I have my little piece from my template here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to first lay it out here and see how big that is. And that's a little bit bigger than what I kind of want, because what I'm going to do, like I said, I'm going to do it for the first one. So I'm going to kind of lay it out how big I would want it. And I think right there is about where I'm going to want it. So I'm just going to grab a hold here with my scissors and I'm going to cut this. Okay, so this looks like it's going to be about 1.5 inches. Right at 1.5 inches there is about how that's going to be. So you could cut your little guide at 3 inches, and then all you have to do is cut this in half. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut myself a second piece here. Same height and width. Here we go. And what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to take and I'm going to fold this in half. Make sure you get it folded in half good. And I'm going to come right here in the center of that fold. So you can see my ends here. I'm cutting the fold. I'm going to come in and I'm going to make just a cut right here in the center, just big enough that I can get my suede, my ultra suede through this. So you kind of want to think about this. I like a double loop on these, but you can do kind of what you want. So I'm going to take my cording and I'm going to bring it through this little hole here to decide how long I want the cord. So I think I'm going to cut this about 8 inches. Okay, I think that'll give me plenty. So I'm going to cut it here at the, no, I'm going 10. Better safe than sorry. I'm going 10. Each one of these I kind of do different. I just have fun with it and play with it and see what I like the best. Oh Lord, I picked the worst scissors here. Oh, there we go. I have to fix that. Okay, so if you just want one piece, you can use the one piece. If you want 2 pieces, like I have there, you can cut 2 pieces, which you'll need 4 total. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and cut my 4 because I know that's what I'm going to want. And this right here You can use leather. This is micro suede, 2mm micro suede. And pretty much use whatever you have. Don't have to use anything specifically special to do it with. Okay, so ends. Where are my ends here? There we go. Got a mess here. All right, so I'm gonna fold this other one in half, and I'm gonna go ahead and put the little slit in it. Now, if you want to, what you can do as well is you can fold it in half this way and kind of make you a little tiny, just a little tiny slit, and this will just help it lay more flat if you're using a micro suede like I am. In the end, it's not really gonna matter, but that will just help it lay a little bit more flat if you do something like that. So what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do this on both ends, so let me go ahead and cut this other little piece here. I had already cut it just a little bit further that way, and I'm going to fold it this way, and I'm going to put one little itty bitty cut right there in the center. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my E6000 glue here, and I first am going to take and put both of my cords through this loop. All right, so to finish this off, I'm going to take my 2 pieces of cording here, and I'm going to lay them side by side. Now I'm going to bring them and just kind of fold them over here for just a minute. I do not want to use my fast drying glue for this, because if I use the fast dry, you're going to see it everywhere, especially since I'm using black suede. So I'm going to use my E6000 glue, and what I want to do is I want to come in here and I want to get it especially around the edges really well. Now it looks like I'm putting a lot, but it's a very thin layer. And I want to get under here really good, just like this. And then I'm going to let my cords lay down onto the piece. Okay, bring them in just a smidge, just like that. Just a little bit, not much. And then I'm going to come in and I'm going to lay the excess threads all the way in. And I'm going to make sure it's exactly how I want it. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put glue here on the strings. And I'm going to put glue here on the cord. And then I'm going to press this together. And when I press it together, I'm going to make sure that the ends are even here. And they are. Just like that. Any excess glue I can just kind of take and wipe it off, but that's good. And you can see I've got one little thread sticking out there. I'm going to leave that thread for now, and once it dries, I will go ahead and trim that off. Now, what you'll want to do is put something heavy on that end, because we want it to press really good together. Another thing that you can do is if you have some little clamps, you can clamp these together, because we want it to dry really well and get a good adhesion together. Okay, and I'm going to do that on this side as well. Okay, so I have both ends glued, and I'm going to let these sit overnight to dry. Like I said, you'll want to put something a little bit heavy on it, just so that it will keep these pressed together really good. But we will go ahead and do that, and then I will be able to show you tomorrow what this looks like. But now what I do want to show you also is if you want to run your cord through, how you'll do that. All right, so if you want to actually run your cord up and down through it like this, you can do that as well. So it's very similar to what we've done here, except for instead of cutting the little loop there, the little hole we made for that, we won't put any kind of cuts in it. And when you glue it, you are only going to be gluing about this much of the piece right here, so that this will be left open. So if I was to do this like this, you would see there I would have this much glued here, and then I would have an opening left for this. So you're basically making a little bit of a buckle or a strap to hold that in place. And I'm going to cut this one in half just so that you can see what I mean. So that you would have a piece glued in just like this, and then on the other side you would have your piece glued in just like this, so that you can have your two ends together here to be able to either tie them here at the base or put your cords together, put a bead on it or something, and bring it up to where it tightens it all the way up against the base of your piece. So that is another option that you have as well on a way of finishing off your little ends here. So friends, as you can see, once you get that back complete, you're ready to put it on the hat. I've tied it into a little bow here. You could also make some fun beaded beads to go on the end if you wanted to. You could put little knots on the end, whatever you wanted to do, all right? So you can see it's just a fun project. I like this one because it goes a little bit quicker than, say, one of my projects that's gonna be thicker like this, okay? So it's a great one to start out with if you've always wanted to make a hat band but you've never known how to. This one is a great project to start and learn that with. So again, head to my website, get the free pattern. I also have the patterns listed on my website that you can purchase for this hat band as well as this hat band. So thank you so much for watching. Make sure to come back next Monday where we're going to be doing that new bracelet with square stitch, so that if you need to, you can definitely make your hat band with square stitch. So we'll see you guys later. Have a great one. Bye-bye.